All right, welcome back to the deep dive. When you sent in this stack of articles about Trump's latest pick for Secretary of Defense, like Pete Hegseth, I was floored.
Yeah.
Fox News guy leading the Pentagon. I mean, it's like something out of a political satire, right?
Yeah.
But this is real. This is real life, and everyone from like seasoned generals to everyday folks they're scratching their heads right now.
Yeah, it is. It's certainly an unconventional choice,
Yeah.
to say the very least. And it's not just the headline shock that we need to unpack here. This appointment raises a fundamental question. Can someone like Pete Hegseth, with his background and beliefs, effectively lead the U.S. military in today's complex world?
Right, because it's not just about Hegseth himself, is it? It's about what this choice says about Trump's priorities
Yeah.
for the military and what it could mean for everything from troop morale to America's standing on the global stage.
Exactly. We need to look beyond the initial surprise and analyze the potential consequences of putting someone with Hegseth's, with his very specific worldview in charge of the most powerful military on the planet.
Okay, so let's give our listeners some context here. Who is that's Pete Hegseth and what's his story?
Well, on paper, he's got some military credentials, I mean.
Yeah.
He is an Army veteran, served in both Iraq and Afghanistan, earned a couple Bronze Stars.
Yeah.
After leaving active duty, he became, a very vocal conservative commentator.
Yeah.
First with Concerned Veterans for America, and then as a host on Fox News.
Yeah, and it was on Fox that he really caught Trump's eye, right?
Yes.
He was just a staunch defender of Trump's policies, a regular presence on shows like Fox and Friends, and someone who seemed to genuinely admire the president. He even got considered for VA secretary back in Trump's first term.
Yes, the connection between the two men is strong. And that's what makes the appointment so intriguing. Trump has a history of picking loyalists for key positions, people who are more likely to align with his worldview and carry out his directives without question.
But this isn't just any cabinet position, right? We're talking about the Department of Defense. The person in charge has to navigate incredibly complex issues, work with top military brass, and make decisions that impact global security. You'd think experience and expertise would be top priorities.
And that's precisely why this nomination is raising so many eyebrows, more than a few anxieties. You sent in a lot of sources that capture this reaction perfectly, I think. One quote that really stuck with me was, "Who the FK is this guy?"
Yeah, I saw that one too. It was from a retired general, if I remember correctly. And it wasn't just him. Defense experts across the board are expressing serious doubts about Hegseth's qualifications.
And I think it's important to understand why that reaction is so strong. It's not just about Hegseth's lack of traditional experience in defense policy. It taps into a deeper concern about Trump's judgment and his tendency to prioritize loyalty over competence.
And maybe even a fear that he's trying to politicize the military, right? I mean, Hegseth has been incredibly vocal about his belief that the military has become too woke. He sees things like diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, or DEI for short, as a threat to military effectiveness.
That's a crucial point DEI has become. A major flashpoint in our current political climate. For those who might not be familiar with the term, DEI refers to policies and programs designed to create a more inclusive and equitable environment, especially for people from historically marginalized groups.
Yeah.
Hegseth, and by extension, Trump believe that these initiatives are distracting from the military's core mission of combat readiness.
And he's not just talking about changing policies. Hegseth has explicitly called for firing woke generals who support DEI. Imagine you're a high-ranking military leader who's dedicated your life to serving this country, and you hear this guy who's never held a high-level position in the Pentagon talking about purging people like you.
It's got to be demoralizing, right?
Absolutely. And beyond. Beyond the impact on morale, it raises serious concerns about civilian-military relations. The Secretary of Defense needs to be able to work collaboratively with the Joint Chiefs of Staff to listen to their advice and to weigh their expertise against the president's directives. Can Hegseth, with his combative personality and his stated desire to clean house, really foster that kind of relationship?
It sounds like a recipe for chaos, to be honest.
Yeah.
And that chaos could have a ripple effect, impacting everything from military readiness to America's standing in the world. It certainly has the potential to be a very destabilizing force. And that's why we need to delve deeper into the potential consequences of Hegseth's stated priorities. If his vision becomes Pentagon policy, what will it mean for the military, for the country, for the world?
All right, well, that's a pretty good cliffhanger, don't you think? But we got to give our listeners a chance to catch their breath. We'll be right back to explore those potential consequences and unpack the reactions to this bombshell nomination. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about the potential for chaos if Hegseth's vision for the military becomes reality. But chaos might be putting it mildly if you look at some of the reactions from folks who really understand national defense.
Yeah, the sources you sent paint a pretty clear picture. This isn't just about partisan politics. You've got people from across the spectrum raising serious red flags. You've got retired generals, think tank analysts, even some Republicans in Congress saying, whoa, hold on a second, this guy's not ready for prime time.
And it's not just that they disagree with Hegseth's views. It's that they're deeply worried about his ability to actually do the job. The Secretary of Defense needs a deep understanding of complex policy, global strategy, budgetary issues, and the delicate balance of civilian-military relations.
You know, it's funny. One expert we read compared it to letting a talk radio host perform brain surgery. They might have strong opinions about healthcare, but that doesn't mean they're qualified to operate on someone's brain.
That's a great analogy, and that's what's so concerning here. Hegseth's expertise lies in commentary, not in the nitty-gritty of running a massive and complex organization like the Pentagon.
So given all this pushback, what are the chances he actually gets confirmed?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The Senate has to approve all cabinet appointments, and the hearings are going to be a real showdown. You can bet the Democrats are going to grill Hegseth on his past statements, his lack of experience, his potential conflicts of interest.
And you know, Trump, he loves a good fight. This could be the first major battle of his second term, a real test of his political power.
Absolutely. If enough Republicans get cold feet, it could be a nail-biter of a vote. They'll have to weigh their loyalty to Trump against the potential fallout from confirming someone who's so widely seen as unqualified.
All right, but let's play devil's advocate for a second. Say Hegseth manages to charm the senators, smooth talks his way through the hearings, and actually becomes Secretary of Defense. What happens then? What should we be watching for?
Well, the first clue will be his early policy moves. Who does he appoint to key positions within the Pentagon? Does he surround himself with experienced professionals, or does he stack the deck with loyalists who share his ideology?
And what about his actual policies? We've talked about his desire to root out wokeness, but what does that actually mean in practice? Does he try to reverse the transgender service ban? Does he gut diversity programs? Does he pull funding from initiatives he deems too woke?
These are all critical questions, and the answers will have real-world consequences, not just for the military, but for the country as a whole. Remember, we're talking about the institution responsible for defending the United States, not just from external threats, but from internal divisions.
And let's not forget the global implications. World leaders are watching this nomination with a mix of confusion and concern. What message does it send about America's commitment to its alliances?
That's a great point. America's global standing is already shaky after the past few years. Appointing someone like Hegseth, who's known for his isolationist views and his skepticism of international institutions, could further erode trust and make it harder to cooperate on critical issues like climate change and nuclear proliferation.
So it's not just about what happens inside the Pentagon. This has the potential to impact America's role in the world, its relationships with allies, its ability to project power and influence on the global stage.
Exactly. The stakes are incredibly high. This isn't just another cabinet appointment. It's a potential turning point for the U.S. military and its place in the world.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential chaos within the military, the global implications, the reactions from experts and politicians. But what about the average person, the folks who aren't following every twist and turn of this saga? Why should they care about who's running the Pentagon?
That's a really important question. Sometimes it's easy to feel disconnected from these big political stories, to think that they don't really impact our everyday lives. But the truth is, the decisions made at the Pentagon have a ripple effect that touches us all.
For example?
Well, think about it. The military is funded by our tax dollars. The decisions made by the Secretary of Defense affect how those dollars are spent, whether it's on new weapon systems, training programs, or taking care of veterans.
And of course, there's the whole issue of whether or not we go to war. That's a decision ultimately made by the president. But the Secretary of Defense plays a crucial role in advising the president, providing military options, and assessing the risks and potential consequences.
And if those assessments are based on ideology or personal loyalty rather than sound military judgment, it could lead to disastrous consequences.
So what you're saying is, even if we don't wear a uniform or work in Washington, the decisions made at the Pentagon can impact our wallets, our safety, and even our sense of who we are as a nation.
Precisely. And that's why it's so important to pay attention, to understand the stakes,
Yeah.
and to hold our leaders accountable for the choices they make.
All right, that's a pretty sobering thought. But before we spiral into existential dread, let's shift gears a bit and talk about what we can do to stay informed and engaged, even if we're not policy wonks or military experts. What are some key things our listeners should be watching for as this story unfolds? So, we've talked about ways to stay informed and engaged, even if you're not a policy wonk, right?
Right.
What are some key things that our listeners should be watching for as this Hegseth saga unfolds?
Well, first and foremost, keep an eye on the confirmation hearings. They're going to be must-watch TV, and they'll give you a real sense of Hegseth's temperament, his grasp of the issues, and his ability to handle those tough questions.
And let's be real, those senators are going to come prepared with some zingers.
Oh, yeah. They're going to want to know how Hegseth plans to address the concerns of military leaders, how he's going to handle the complex challenges facing the Pentagon, and whether he understands the gravity of the position he's been nominated for.
Exactly. Pay attention to his answers, but also pay attention to the questions themselves. They'll reveal a lot about what's at stake and what people are worried about.
Okay, so that's the confirmation process. What about if he actually becomes Secretary of Defense? What then?
Well, then it gets even more interesting. You'll want to watch his early policy moves. Who does he appoint to key positions? What are his first actions? These early decisions will signal his priorities and give us a glimpse into his leadership style.
It's not just about official pronouncements and policy documents, right?
Right.
It's also about the tone he sets, the messages he sends. Does he try to bridge the divide between civilian leadership and the military brass? Or does he double down on his anti-woke rhetoric and create even more division? Exactly. Pay attention to it, to his speeches, his interviews, his interactions with military leaders. These will reveal a lot about his approach to the job.
Yeah.
And the direction he wants to take the Pentagon.
And beyond Washington, keep an eye on the global reaction. How do America's allies and adversaries respond to Hegseth's appointment? Does it create instability? Does it embolden America's rivals? Does it make it harder to cooperate on critical issues?
These are all questions that will play out on the world stage. And they'll have a direct impact on America's security and its place in the world.
So it's not just about watching the news, right? It's about connecting the dots, thinking critically about the information we're getting and understanding the broader implications.
And that's where the deep dive comes in, right? We're here to help you make sense of the complex world, to cut through the noise and get to the heart of what matters.
Exactly. We're your personal knowledge Sherpas, guiding you through the treacherous terrain of information overload.
But even with the best guides, the journey of understanding is ultimately up to you.
So keep asking those tough questions, keep challenging assumptions, and keep exploring the issues that matter most.
Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about Pete Hegseth.
Right.
It's about the future of the U.S. military, the security of our nation, and the kind of world we want to live in.
And those are things worth fighting for, worth thinking about, worth engaging with. So stay informed, stay curious, and keep diving deep.
Until next time, thanks for listening.